What's up YouTube, and welcome to another tutorial where today I'm going to show you how you can create these Spotify custom designs using a photograph of your choice and a song of your choice. It could be you enjoying your favorite photo from the summer and your favorite song from the summer. It could be you and your loved one with your favorite song as a couple, a first dance song and a photograph from a wedding, your best friend and you enjoying your favorite song, or it could otherwise be you and a loved one in a holiday season enjoying your favorite Christmas song, for example. Now, as always with my tutorials, you can follow along, and I've left images in the description down below where we're going to replicate some of the images you've just seen. So go ahead and download those all to your iPad and save them into your photos, and we can get started with creating a few different concepts. And towards the end of the video, I'll give you some pointers on how you can sell these and maybe create some stores online where you can take some online commissions. So with all that said, let's get started with today's tutorial. So opening up Procreate, the first thing we want to do, of course, is create a canvas. Now, the screenshot we're going to make in a moment from Spotify is going to be your screen size. So if you actually hit this plus icon here, we can then go ahead and select the option of screen size, and that will match up perfectly to the screenshot we're about to create. If you ever wanted to make this bigger, you'd need to lock the aspect and make it bigger if you want to create a larger print, for example. But we're just going to go ahead and select screen size, and we will have our canvas ready to go. Let's now hop over to Spotify and grab the song of choice. Now we're going to go ahead and use this song here as an example. I love this song. It's just a summer song, and this may vary depending obviously on what your customer wants. Now you're going to want to find the song that you're after, and different backgrounds will be more colorful than others, and I'll show you how you can change that later on anyway. The only things you want to consider while you're here, let's make sure the shuffle and the option to repeat is turned to white, so they're turned off. You're then going to want to make sure, of course, you drag it to wherever you want the song to be. It could be smack bang in the middle. You're then going to want to go ahead and create a screenshot. And to do that, you can go ahead and you can just press your power button and volume up at the same time, and it will take a screenshot. It will be down here, and you'll also get this pop-up window, but we're not interested in that. We'll just hit the cross on there. So once you've taken your screenshot, we're going to go back into Procreate and make some tweaks to it. Now back in Procreate, we're going to go straight up to our actions. We're going to use the option of add, and we're going to use the option of insert a photo. Once you tap on that, it's going to open up your gallery, and you're going to be presented with your photographs. Now I've created an album with all the content we're going to use for today, and we've got the screenshot here that I just made. If we tap on that, it's going to drop it in as a new layer, and you can just simply tap on your little cursor there at the top to get rid of it. Now there's lots of sort of tweaking here we want to do and tidy up and get rid of a few of the icons. Now you'll notice there's a gradient that runs top to bottom, so we have to abide by that, and I'll show you exactly how we can do that. The first thing we're going to get rid of is these options here. So we're going to go to the layer, we're going to make sure we're on it. We're going to go to our selection tool. We're going to use the rectangle option, and we're going to make sure color fill is turned off. We want it nice and grayed out like so. And we're just going to make a very small selection here in terms of height that matches at least the height of those items we want to get rid of. And then we're just going to go to here and go to copy and paste. What it will then have done is if we go up to our layers, it'll have pasted in that selection on a separate layer. And if we tap on our cursor, we make sure we use the option of freeform. We can grab the middle node on the right out the 3, drag it to the right, and drag it to the left. We're always going to go horizontal so that when we tap on our cursor, it matches the gradient of the design. I want to get rid of my search up here, so I'm going to go back to my layer first of all, tap on that selection that we just made and merge it down onto one layer. Then we'll repeat. We'll go to our selection tool. We'll create a rectangle beside the text we want to get rid of. We'll go to the option of copy paste, grab our cursor, freeform, middle node on the right on this occasion, and I can just drag it over the top. I can go back to my layer for that one, tap on it and merge it down, and we're done and we can move on. I've got this song saved, so I'm actually going to go ahead and get rid of this tick. So I'm going to go to my selection tool. I'm going to go ahead and create a box to the right of it. We'll go to copy paste, grab my cursor, freeform, drag to the left, and we'll overdo that. We'll then tap on the layer and we'll merge it down. There's a big box at the bottom here for the lyrics. We can get rid of that nice and easily. We'll use this area down here in the bottom left. So we'll go to our selection tool, rectangle again. We'll create a box that's going to be a little bit taller. It's got this little shadow in behind it. So we're going to want to get as close to that icon as we can. So I'm going to go up to here, for example. Then we'll go to copy paste, go to your cursor, and using freeform, just drag it all the way to the right hand side, just to make sure that gradient's perfect. Tap on your cursor when you're done. And for me, I'm happy with all the changes we've made. We can now get started with considering our subject. So we're going to go up to our layers. We're going to make sure that last selection, we tap on it and we merge it down. And the first thing we're going to want to go ahead and do is make a selection of the album art. Now I'm going to go to my selection tool again. We're going to zoom in and we're going to go ahead and make a selection of the album art. Now you want to make sure you're either a pixel larger or bang on the size of the actual album art. So using rectangle again, we're just going to simply start up here, make a selection, hope that you're bang on the line. If you're not, just make sure it's a tiny bit bigger, and then go to the option of copy paste. Again, you'll get the album art on a separate layer. And we're actually going to go ahead and tap on the album art and we're going to go to the option here of alpha lock. So we can't paint outside of it, but the only thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to simply go to my adjustments, Gaussian blur, and swipe from left to right. Because maybe your customer wants the album art as the background and they want themselves cut out. You could blur the album art. It's just another option that you can provide to a potential customer. I'm going to go ahead and blur this one right out to about 33% and tap on my adjustments when I'm done. Let's now actually introduce the subject. So if we go ahead and go up to our actions, we're going to want to go to the option of insert a photo. Now the first photograph I'm going to go ahead and introduce today is going to actually be this couple here. I'm going to introduce them, show you how you can manually cut someone out, and then I'll show you how you can do an automatic cutout. So we're going to first of all tap on the photo we want to introduce. Now with your photographs, there's one thing you want to make sure that you are provided with is a photograph where the head is clearly in the frame. You do not want the head being cut out of the frame. For example, if your photograph that you were provided looks something a little bit like this, it's not going to be very good. We want the subjects of our sort of photograph to be a little bit bigger than the album art, and that way we get a cool kind of 3D, like they're reaching out of the art. Now once you've got your photograph, we're going to go up to the layer for it and we're just going to lower the opacity down of it just for a second, down to about 80%, until you can clearly see through and you can see the border of the album art. If we go to our cursor, we're going to use the uniform option and we're just going to move it up. And we're going to go ahead and just make sure that our subject's head there just exceeds the frame. I can see that line just here. You can just about see that on the end of my pen. And if I go ahead and I position them in the frame, I'm going to go ahead and move him off to the left and we'll have them there. You can, if you want to, position them in the center and cut around here. The only thing that I recommend with your photographs is you want to make sure that if it leaves the frame, it also nicely tucks in at the bottom. You don't want anything at the bottom overhanging the outside of the album art. If anything exceeds the frame, it needs to be above this sort of area down here and on the left hand side. So if I tap on my cursor now, we've now got his hands over here and his head up here that are out of frame. So the first thing we're actually going to go ahead and do is we're going to mask out the actual frame of the album art. So this selection with the blurry album art that we created, we're going to tap on it. We're going to select it. Again, make sure color fill is turned off. We're going to go back up to the layer for our photograph, tap on it, and we're going to go ahead and mask it. Now, if you've not used a mask before, it's a temporary way of hiding and showing part of the layer. And we've now basically hidden everything that exceeds that album art selection that we made. So let's tap on our selection tool, making sure we are on the mask for that layer for the photograph, and we need our color now set to white. So we're double tapping the top left, go to our brush and change it to calligraphy and the monoline brush. And we're going to increase the size up to 100%. And we're going to make a very, very, very simple, just draw back in of his head. Now, we'll come back to this in a second. We're also going to go ahead and introduce the additional options over here. So we're just going to go ahead and just loosely draw in what we may want to include in our cutout. So now we've revealed them again. We're now going to go ahead and change our color to black. Reduce the brush size down to something very small, something maybe about 3%. And we're just going to now simply abide by the straight line of the album art. We're going to go ahead and just make our way up towards his hand here. And we're just going to go ahead and just manually cut them out. So we're going to go round his hand. Now, if I make a bit of a shoddy job of this, I apologize. Just for the video's sake, I'm just going to get through it for you. And you can spend as much time as you need to cutting out the subject of your commission. As long as when you come back to the album art line here and you're done with the item you're cutting out, you just draw in a straight line here, like so. And then when you've got a big selection here, all you need to do is drop black into it and it will be hidden. And you can see there, your subject now exceeds the frame. And we'll just go back up to the top here and we're going to go ahead and give him a haircut. So we're going to go ahead and get right up close to his hair, up to that now horizontal line at the top of the album art. And we're just going to simply cut him out. So I'm going to go all the way around. Again, spend as much time as you need to on your version. I'm just going to whip around here like so and go all the way across to that straight line. And then when I've got a little gap, I can drag the black into it and that will also hide it. Now, if we go back to the layer and we tap on the layer, tap on the N and bring that back up to 100% on max, we now have our subject nicely cut out. But let's say you want to go ahead and make it even easier using the Photographs app and the automatic selection. So that's a manual way of doing it. I'll now show you an automatic way of doing it. So for a moment, I'll turn off that subject. We're not going to use that photograph now. I'm going to go ahead and go back to my photos. And in the album, I've got this photograph here of this lady on the beach enjoying her summer. So if we actually go ahead and tap on that photo, one thing we can do is we can hold down with our finger on a subject of a photograph and it'll pull it out. It's now made this little line around the outside where it's now cut it out for you. And you can go to the option of copy. If we go back into Procreate, we then go ahead and swipe with 3 fingers down and go to the option of paste. We can now paste in that selection. You'll need to allow the paste and your subject's been cut out. You can use the uniform option to scale your subject down and position them in the frame. And this one's great because our hands are exceeding the frame. We've got a nice amount of sort of just leaving the frame. It looks nice in 3D. So if I, for example, position her here, maybe a couple of her hairs just exceeding the frame, like so, we end up with this cool effect. But of course, you've now left the background behind. So we have to reintroduce the background and align it to the photograph again. So if we go to our layers, we'll just go ahead and create a new layer and drag it underneath our inserted image there. This is kind of important so you can make sure things are layered correctly. Then go back to your actions and go to the option of insert photo. And once you find the photograph that we just took the selection from, tap on it and insert it into frame. Now, of course, you'll see that she's a little bit bigger here in the photograph, and we're just going to need to uniform this down to roughly the same sort of size. And then you're just going to have to manually just make some tweaks here until they are just about the same size. So we're just scaling that up and down. It's a little bit fiddly on this occasion, but it will just take a couple of attempts, but it saves you cutting out the whole design. So there's pros and cons to both. Now, don't worry necessarily about the top. Like I can see her hand is just ever so slightly wrong there. I can align that a little bit better and I can just move that across. Again, you can spend as much time as you need to. That is actually pretty bang on. And then when I'm done, as long as they exceed the frame of the album art, you're good. The only thing you'll have to do is if the photograph when you place it in is now a little bit too small, just go to your layers, select both layers, swiping from left to right, and then grab your cursor and you can scale this up and down as much as you need to just to fill the album art underneath. Then go to your layer and the photograph you added for the background, we're going to go ahead and drag it down to where our blurry album art is, tap on it and clip it to that layer. And then immediately your subject is now floating up and out of the design. And because she's on a separate layer completely, we can now introduce some additional shadows. We can make that really stand out in a more 3D way at the top here. And you can do that with the other photo that I showed you a second ago. So for example, if I go ahead and grab my selection of our subject, swipe her to the left and duplicate her. If we then tap on the bottom one out the two, tap on it and alpha lock the layer. If we then go to our colors and make sure black is selected by double tapping at the bottom with the disc. If we go to the layer again and tap on it and fill it, you'll now see that the photograph is now full of all black. And if we tap on it and turn off the alpha lock, we can drag this now underneath our blurry album art. We can then go ahead and go to the layer, change the blend mode from normal to overlay. And we can go to our adjustments, Gaussian blur, and swipe from left to right and add in maybe like a 10% Gaussian blur. It's totally up to you. And if you grab your cursor using the uniform option and scale this one down, for example, scale this one down, and you can make that shadow fit on the inside of her hands there, making her look like she's bursting out of the frame a little bit. And tap on your cursor when you're done. Now I set the layer to overlay because the color of the background will nicely sort of come through. The shadow there isn't black, it's more of like a round sort of a browny orange tone. And we've now got a shadow there and our subject's jumping out the frame. Now one of the latter stages is actually to change the background color to maybe a color of your desired choice or even your customer's choice. So if we go up to our layers, we go down to the layer of the initial screenshot that we took. If we go to our adjustments and we go to hue, saturation and brightness, we can then just simply use the hue slider. That may be a quick and easy solution. The photograph of the screenshot of this particular song was nice and bright. It's got a nice good amount of color to it. If it doesn't, you may need to increase the brightness. You may need to increase the saturation. This is totally dependent on the song that you choose. But ultimately you can scroll through the hue slider here and I may want to go ahead and match her bikini, for example. So I may want to go ahead and just find a like purpley tone here. I may want to reduce the saturation. I may want to go ahead and increase the brightness or even reduce the brightness. That there is almost a perfect match. And if you can find something in a photograph that matches, it will look awesome and it will match that nicely. And your shadow that you created now is more of a purpley tone rather than the orange that it was before. But what if you want to go ahead and change the background and you want to go ahead and add some additional colors in here? It's really easy to do. If we go to our layers and we make sure we are on the layer for our screenshot in the background, we can create a new layer. If we change the blend mode from normal to the option of color right at the bottom, I can then go to my colors and I could go ahead and grab any sort of like orangey sort of yellow tone, make sure it's nice and bright. And I can go ahead and change my brush to, say, the soft airbrush under airbrushing. And we can make our brush size fairly large, maybe around about 30%. I could go ahead and paint in a bit of yellow here at the top and just nicely blend that out and let that fade out towards the bottom. And you can create some multi-toned backgrounds. But your color that you paint in, you'll notice mine's a little bit brighter up here in the palette compared to the actual background. That's dependent on the actual background of your screenshot. So my screenshot there is a little bit darker. If I was to go back to my adjustments again for hue, saturation and brightness and increase the brightness, that yellow is going to slowly become more vibrant and more punchy. And you may like this type of look. You're going to have to experiment with the different colors, and each screenshot of the album art that you take will massively vary the type of colors that you see. So if I'm going to go ahead and increase that up, that looks quite nice, around about sort of 60% now on the brightness. I could even increase the saturation of the song underneath and I could have this beautiful strong amount of color. And if you want to, you can go to your layers and go to the little bit of color that I added in the top left, go to my adjustments and Gaussian blur and swipe from left to right and just blur that out very high and it will just blend it down. You can create a really beautiful gradient and a change of colors. And that's just one example on what you can create with this type of design. And as I showed you in the beginning, it may be a couple and your favorite song together, where this one's got a darker color in the background. We've got the original design for our subject there at the beach. We then have a couple at their wedding and it's the exact same thing. You just cut out the heads there and you can match the background to the photograph potentially by adjusting those hue sliders and the brightness and the saturation. And it may be you and your best friend as well, or I've just cut them out using the automatic method, put them on a white background and blurred out the song in the background, and you end up with this really cool little effect. So that's it, that's the end of the tutorial itself. Now before we end, I just want to give you a few pointers if you want to actually sell these. Now you have full permission from me if you use the techniques in today's tutorial to go ahead and create the commissions. That's totally up to you. One place you may want to do that is Etsy, for example. What I recommend you do is I would do 10 to 20 different variations of your friends, of your family, different songs, different photographs, and upload a bunch of them onto an Etsy store showing what you're capable of doing. The work itself doesn't take very long, so price yourself a little bit more on the reasonable side and build up a lot of orders, build up a lot of customers. For example, I used to create a few of these in the early days for friends and family for different occasions. I created this portrait kind of illustration look where we used a photograph and created a nice illustration from it with their first dance song. Now, you can do whatever style you want. You can use your photograph. You can also create those very minimal style portrait designs as well. Now, this is a prime example of like a minimalistic style of portrait. You may want to do something like this rather than a photograph. It's totally up to you of what you want to do. By the way, if you're interested in creating some very minimal kind of painting portraits like this, for example, you can use the same techniques in this tutorial that I created here on YouTube. I'll leave a link to it in the description down below. I'll also make it the end video at the very end of the video. But you can use this technique here, a very minimalistic painting style, to create some very simple portraits, not only of pets, but also of people. So I really hope that it's successful for you and maybe you can generate some online orders and you can have some fun creating these really cool Spotify designs. As always, please be sure to drop a like down below if you found this video interesting and useful. And as always, a massive thank you to all of my supporters over on Patreon. If you want to get your name featured in videos, get access to a catalogue of over 70 tutorials and much more, hit the link in the description down below. Thank you so much for watching and I'll see you in the next one.